What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I am DL here with another classic movie review. Today we are getting back into the Rocky and Creed franchise. Creed 3 is going to be out in theaters in a couple of months, so we're going to be talking about all six Rocky films and the first two Creed movies before it's released in theaters. I've already talked about Rocky 1, Rocky 2, and Rocky 3. If you guys haven't seen my reviews for those movies, I'll put a link in the description below so you guys can watch them. But today we are continuing on talking about Rocky 4 that came out in 1985. Let's get into this. So if you guys see my reviews for the previous three movies, you guys know that I really enjoyed them. The first Rocky movie is a classic, liked it a lot. Rocky 2, I really enjoyed too. I thought it was a very worthy sequel to the first one, and I ended up liking it a little bit more than the first film. And then Rocky 3, I had a blast with, and up to this point, I think it was probably my favorite Rocky film up until this point. But I'll be honest, I didn't really see them continuing after the third movie because I thought all the storylines and the character development from the previous three movies, I thought it wrapped up pretty well after the third movie. Thought everything came together really, really well with those first three films. So where do you really go from here? Is what I was thinking. Hence, we got Rocky 4. So this is the last film that Sylvester Stallone ended up directing in this Rocky series. And when it comes to all the Rocky films, Rocky 4 seems to be the one that everyone talks about the most. Good, bad, or indifferent. I hear a lot of mixed opinions about this movie. For some people, they may consider this their favorite Rocky film. It's kind of a cult classic in a way. Then there's some people that say like this movie kind of broke the franchise or started to break the franchise because of how ridiculous and over the top the plot is. And I'll be honest with me, I kind of lean more towards the not liking this movie so much. Yeah, I'm sorry guys for any of you who are fans of this movie, but unfortunately I was not. This is probably the first Rocky film that I didn't end up really enjoying that much. Now, do I think this movie is awful? No. There's some things about this movie that I did still really enjoy, but as far as the plot and just the direction of this movie, I didn't think it really came together as well as the previous movies. But I guess before I get into details, I guess I will put up a spoiler warning for people that haven't seen it, because there's some really important stuff that happens in the movie that I do want to talk about. So I guess if you haven't seen this movie, go watch it and come back and listen to this if you don't want to know anything. So we start off this movie with Rocky in retirement. He's like in his mid to late 40s at this point, and Apollo's retired as well. But then the Soviet Union decides to come into America and bring in their fighter to come into the boxing scene, which we're introduced to Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren. He's this tall, imposing guy that the Soviet Union trained him to be like the most powerful boxer there. He's indestructible. He's huge. His punches pack so much impact. So yeah, they pretty much are building Drago up to be like this Terminator in the movie. So Apollo sees Drago coming in, and that motivates him to come out of retirement and face him in an exhibition. And Rocky, is trying to convince him not to do the match because Apollo hasn't boxed in years and he's not in the same condition that he was when he was younger. But Apollo still has that hunger to be in the ring, because he's a fighter. He loves fighting. That's his passion, just like Rocky. So Apollo ends up, taking the fight with Drago, and when he does fight him, nobody expected how powerful Drago was. Like, Apollo didn't even last 2 rounds with Drago, and so much so that Drago ends up killing Apollo in this movie. Yeah, Apollo dies in this film from Drago. And so that's when Rocky decides to come out of retirement and challenge Drago, and they end up having their fight in Russia. Rocky ends up going to Russia in Drago's home turf to face him to avenge Apollo. So overall, I just thought the plot for this movie I thought was a bit ridiculous, and I know it's strange for me to say because I said in the previous reviews that I felt like the over the top nature of these movies they were building with each film. So this is probably something that I shouldn't have been surprised about, but I just I just was not a fan of the creative choice in general. Like I didn't like that they decided to kill Apollo like that. Because Apollo ended up being one of my favorite characters in this franchise, and I just love the dynamic that he built with Rocky in the previous three movies. And so I just felt like it's such a disservice to his character for him to be killed off like that. And as far as Ivan Drago himself, like I'll admit, like I think as far as them building him up as a villain, you know, I do see him being more of a substantial threat than Clubber Lang was in 3. But as far as personality as a character, there's not really much there for me. He barely even talks in the movie. He pretty much has his wife and like the main, Soviet general, whatever. They're pretty much his talking piece throughout the movie. Um, Man, I said in the previous reviews that these movies are giving major wrestling vibes. Like this is definitely feeling like wrestling here, more than the other movies. Which I mean, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing for a lot of people. But for me, it ended up being more of a more. I can only suspend my disbelief so far. And just like the fact that Drago is so powerful that his punches are just able to kill someone like that. Like I just felt like that's way too ridiculous for me. Like even with Clubber Lang, that he's an imposing, villain and like he's very powerful. He still can get hurt as well. He's still vulnerable, and it was just too much that they made Dolph Lundgren out to be like this Terminator, like unstoppable force. Like I just thought it was kind of ridiculous to me. Now I will say that Sylvester Stallone's Rocky is still really good. I don't really have anything bad to say about him, and definitely I buy him. Wanting to fight Drago. Because at this point he's just lost so much. At this point, he lost Mickey in the second movie. He just lost Apollo in this film. So like his friends and his mentors are just slowly dwindling away. He's starting to lose like more people that he cares about. So like I definitely feel from an emotional standpoint I understand why he would want to avenge Apollo, and I definitely I was behind him as far as that. And even it's got to the point where Adrian is having a hard time supporting Rocky because she sees how powerful Drago is and she's afraid for Rocky's safety, which is definitely understandable, so much so that she doesn't end up supporting Rocky in this fight. Polly, once again, I don't really like him as a character, but he mellowed off a little bit since the last movie, so I guess I'll give him that. There's a ridiculous plot point with Rocky getting him a robot for his birthday, which I thought, okay, that's kind of silly. We got robots in the 80s. Okay, sure. And I still like to see the relationship that Rocky has with his son. He's a little bit older now. I think he's like a 9 or 10 in this movie, but I still am glad to see that the relationship between father and son dynamic hasn't gone away with this one. But I will say the training montage of this movie I thought was really really good. I definitely like seeing like the different dynamics of the training montage because you see Drago train as well, and you see it's very different from how Rocky trains. Like when Rocky comes to Moscow, he ends up training in the mountains, and he's like chopping wood, he's running in the snow, he's climbing mountains. It's like the pretty much the bare bone stuff of training, I guess. And then you see Drago just training in a lab facility, and you see him getting diagnosed with all the analytics and stuff like that. They're pumping him with steroids. They're having him, being connected to all these machines and stuff like that to track his status and stuff like that. So you definitely see two different dynamics of the montage. And I like the music as well. It has a more of a synthy techno sound, which we are in the heart of the '80s, so I guess that we're starting to transition to that point. But I definitely like the montage in this, and this is also the debut where they use the song "Hearts on Fire." Hearts on fire, burning desire. So I thought that was pretty good. When we get to the actual fight with Drago and Rocky, I thought it was a really good fight. I really liked it. I don't think it's the best. I still think the fight with Rocky and Clubber Lang was better, but I definitely thought this was a good second. It did kind of bother me that Rocky. It felt like in a couple of moments he started to divert to his ways in the first two movies. Like, he's not dodging attacks as well as he did in the third movie, or he's not blocking as much as he did in the third movie. Which I know some people want to argue, well, he's gotten older now, so he's not going to be in the same shape that he was in the third movie. True, but you don't unlearn how to block and dodge at the very least, So it wasn't as bad as it was in the first two movies. His fighting style, like he's still hard to some stuff that he learned from Creed, but like not as much, which kind of disappointed me. But definitely there was a back and forth going on with Drago. It was very very intense. Definitely the most brawling of the fights that we gotten up to this point. Very very intense. Though one thing that also kind of bothered me though is that of how long the fight went on, because like we saw with the fight with Apollo and Drago that Apollo didn't even last 2 rounds with him, you know, and of course we know that Rocky could take more damage than Apollo, but the fact that Drago trained even harder for this match, you know, and Rocky's not even in the same condition that he was in the previous movies. I just found it far fetched that the fight lasted more than 10, 11 rounds. Like with how hard Drago can fight, like I wouldn't think the fight would have lasted that long. Like there's literally a montage with them fighting continuously, round after round after round, and I thought, okay, that's kind of ridiculous. But you know, Rocky does end up winning at the end, which of course, you kind of expect that. But another thing that was silly, that the Soviets end up turning on Drago at the end, and then they're Team Rocky now, and then Rocky has that silly speech at the end that somehow unifies America and the Soviets now. So the Soviets are now supporters of Rocky in America because of Rocky's speech, and it's like, if I can change, you can change, and anybody can change. I'm just like, okay, I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to have something heartfelt, but like it just is so silly. It's so ridiculous, Like the Soviets would not just turn on Drago that easily and just be all about Rocky at that point. I just thought that was just so silly to me. I'm sorry. But yeah, overall, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie. It's probably one of my least favorites of the Rocky and Creed franchise in general. I know there's people that do enjoy this movie, but yeah, I just didn't think that the story and the structure of this film came around for me as much as the previous three movies. And to those of you who are wondering, no, I did not see the extended director's cut of Rocky that came out recently. Honestly, I don't think my opinion would really change on the film if I watched it. If this director's cut magically had a version where Drago doesn't kill Apollo and Drago ends up being a more interesting and compelling character in that version, maybe it would be better for me. But I know it doesn't. So yeah, I don't really have an interest in seeing the director's cut. But this version that I watched, there's still really some really good performances in here, and I thought the training montage, the fights was still really good. There was still some compelling stuff with Rocky in general, but like for me, I just didn't like the creative choices they did in this movie. I thought the physics of the fighting was over the top. I didn't like the silly stuff with the America versus Soviet Union storyline. America is great and the foreign country is bad. Like I just thought that was corny. But in general, I don't hate this movie. I think it's okay. But this is not a movie that I revisit again numerous times. So overall, I'll give Rocky 4 a C plus. That's probably the best I can give it. But those are my thoughts on Rocky 4. What did you guys think about it? Did you guys love it? Did you guys hate it? Did you guys think it was okay? Comment your thoughts down below and let me know. So, the next film I will be talking about is the infamous Rocky 5. So, tune in for that when it comes out. But if you guys enjoyed this review, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And hit the bell if you want to be notified on future videos I'll be doing. But that's all I have for you, Rocky fans, and I'll see you guys next time. Talk to you guys later. You will lose.